All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Commissioner Gage, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the delay. The first item on the agenda is to approve our agenda. Second. Motion by Gage, second by Dennert. Just before we approve it, item number 6, the annual conference with our Director of Equalization. He's unable to make it in this morning, so we're going to postpone the annual conference until next week. And he asked me to announce that the County Board of Equalization will organize next Tuesday, directly following the commission meeting, and then our Consolidated Board of Equalization will organize at 1 o'clock next Tuesday afternoon, and that's with the school and the city. So with that, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up is the opportunity for public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone to speak to the commission on any issue that's not on the agenda. So does anyone have anything they'd like to visit with us this morning about? In the room, out there online, or on the phone? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on. Next up, Chris Heeman, Weed and Pest Supervisor, to open chemical bids and discuss pickup purchase from surplus. Good morning.
All right, morning. I think there's one in here, right?
Everything yellow will be it.
Yeah. All right, so we got one bid from Van Diest Supply Company. Alrighty. And looks like they have everything on here. I think did I give you, Lynn, a copy of the state bid?
No.
I don't think it's in here, but I think that's what we did last year and years before. So we only got the one bid from Van Diest, and he gets a lot of the they get a lot of the state bid awards too. So my recommendation would be we go with Van Diest unless the state bid has the lower rate, just award it to state and Van Diest.
Okay. Entertain a motion to that effect. Move. Second. Motion by Feldheim, second by Dennert. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Good luck with your spraying season.
Thanks. Yeah, whenever that starts. So.
Yeah.
Let's see, then the other thing I had, I looked at we're looking at replacing our, the truck we've got. Right now, we're using a 93 Chevy, for our mosquito fogging. And, it's pretty well rusted through. It's got about 240,000 miles on it. So I went online, looked, at the federal surplus, and here on, they've got a 2010 Chevy Colorado.
It was in the packet.
Okay.
It's only got 40,000 miles.
Yeah, so it's 16 years newer, 200,000 fewer miles on it. 11.5 is what they want for it. Checked it out, it seemed to run good. Asked them on the history of it if it had been in like a flood or anything. It came from Georgia, so it's got a little bit of clay on the bottom of it, which is kind of neat. And I figure other than a little wash underneath, doesn't look like it really needs anything. Headlights were a little bit fogged over. One of them was replaced. Everything seems to work on it. So I've got budgeted for machinery and equipment 11,670. So 170 under budget, which is shocking. Actually, just shocked I could even find anything that good a shape with that few miles on it. So, so I guess that's what I'm here for, is to get approval to see if we can go ahead and purchase that for the weed and pest shop, and then either surplus out that 94 Chevy or see if another department. I know Judy mentioned that she needs another truck, but I don't know if this would be any better for her or not. But
This is slightly smaller, your equipment will fit in it, no problem?
yeah, yep, it'll fit in there. It'll be kind of a single-use vehicle. We won't be able to haul a lot of garbage or anything with it, but for a mosquito fogger, which is basically all we're using the blue truck for now, is
Single purpose.
it'd be a lot better for running around town getting parts and stuff too. That That Chevy, we've got a battery switch on there, it keeps dying on us. Something's draining, it's leaving puddles on the floor now, and the AC has been giving us trouble, so it's tired. It could go another couple of years, or it could crap out this spring.
Right.
I have no idea.
You don't wanna be up east of Hecla and have it break down.
Yeah, exactly.
So you anticipated the replacement, and this is within your budget, so I'm assuming that's your recommendation,
Yeah.
is to purchase it, so moved.
Motion by Weiss,
Second.
second by Dennert to authorize purchase of the pickup. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thanks, Chris.
You bet, thank you.
Good luck. Stay still.
would be more than what the purpose were.
Yeah, probably. There's not a lot of good iron on there for scrap anymore, mostly with rust.
Just abandon it.
Yeah, pull the plates and park it.
There you go.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Chris. All right, next up on the agenda, second reading and possible adoption of ordinance 243, which amends portions of Title IV zoning of pipeline.
Ordinance 243, an ordinance entitled, an ordinance to amend portions of Title IV zoning, Chapter 4.01, definitions, Chapter 4.06, agricultural preservation district, Chapter 4.07, mini ag district, Chapter 4.15, light industrial district, Chapter 4.16, heavy industrial district, all adopted by ordinance 243 as amended as Title IV zoning ordinance of Brown County, South Dakota. There are copies. Did everybody get a copy? The other on the counter. If you look through it, the things that are highlighted are some adjustments, changes that were made since last week.
There are copies up on the cabinet there if anybody needs a copy to review. As she stated, the highlighted items are the changes since the first reading last week.
And then I can talk about that.
Okay, Ross?
So we wanted to make clear, accepting the Natural Gas Act, so Northern Natural Gas, any natural gas company, that's an entirely different animal, that we have even less authority to regulate. So we just added that to the definition of pipeline facility. And then we wanted to make clear, that the setback waivers need to be presented to the Board of Adjustment when applying for a conditional use permit if a landowner wants to waive the minimum setback. That's gonna be part of the process. Now, that language, we had some discussions about it. When we get into things like materials list, engineering design, construction plans, those are all things that we can't regulate. So the issue is when we start asking for that stuff, we can't base any decisions off of anything. So my recommendation would be just to drop materials list, engineering design documents, and construction plans, and then just have project plans. That doesn't mean when any application comes in front of the Board of Adjustment that they can't request additional info or ask questions. It just eliminates the parts that are controlled by the federal government.
Or it doesn't preclude the applicant from sharing additional information.
Correct. So it makes it a little vague, but it doesn't mean that we can't ask questions that they can't provide more. It just gets us further away from federal law.
Good question. Why can't we regulate?
Because federal law governs construction.
What about the, U.S. Constitution, states' rights?
That is our recommendation, speaking with outside counsel and the research that we've done.
Did you hear my question?
I did. I'm not gonna have a legal debate with you.
Well, no, my question is, I'm not asking for a legal debate, but I'm asking is, the U.S. Constitution says that belongs to states' rights, because it's never been taken away from us. We never granted it to the federal government. So what we're talking about is the U.S. Constitution, Amendment 10.
There's a lot of developed federal law concerning preemption and interstate commerce.
I understand. But how do we get around the fact that the U.S. Constitution says this is a state right.
Well, what I'll tell you is that would be a very, very expensive fight.
Well, it might be, but just because Congress passed the law doesn't necessarily mean it's constitutional.
I'll let Ernest do it. The Commerce Clause is also part of the Constitution.
I understand.
The Commerce
that.
Clause gives the federal government, Congress, the right to regulate interstate commerce.
But.
So it is also part of the Constitution.
And so is Amendment 10 part of the Constitution. So do we have a conflict between the legislation that was passed by Congress? Was that illegal? It's never been tested, I know. But we don't want to give our states' rights away either. Do it.
You're not giving any states' rights away.
Well, we have if we're not regulating them.
And let's put the proper context in as well.
So we're just.
We are a county, a political subdivision of the state. So
Right.
we're also talking about county regulating. You want to talk about what the states can regulate
In the county.
and the federal government.
And the county exists because of the state, the branch of the county. The township exists because of state law and county.
Just like Ross said, now we're getting into a constitutional debate and we don't have time for this. Our recommendation, after reviewing it, discussing with outside counsel, that this is what we have the authority to regulate.
Would it be appropriate to ask the Attorney General for an opinion?
You can ask on this issue. I doubt that the Attorney General is going to
Yeah, but you.
provide one, but you can
Why do you
certainly
say,
ask.
why do you say you doubt? That we haven't, until we ask the question, we can't read minds.
I think if anyone wants to take that action and make that request of the Attorney General, you're free to do that.
Well, I know, I got his number.
And I would suggest if that's what you want to do, Jerry, go ahead and
Well, no, I'm just
make the
asking
call
the
and
question. I
ask.
want to make sure that we're not giving some of our states' rights away, that we haven't been given.
And again, after our research, our discussions, our recommendation is this ordinance is what the county can regulate. What's left for us to regulate, this is it.
So zoning and planning then is kind of a mixed issue. I mean, it's kind of redundant then, what you're telling me.
Depending on what they're reviewing, absolutely. There's certain things that are dictated by federal law, state law,
I know that.
so on.
I know that.
Right. So, yes, depending on the issue at hand, the Planning and Zoning Board has certain restrictions on what they can and can't make a decision on.
I beg to differ with you, but then that's fine.
So there's
I guess we know that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Doug.
one of the things that we look at, we replace a bridge, we got EPA coming in, so I've never seen anything from Carbon Solution on the National Environmental Protection Act. Has that been done? I mean, we can't put a bridge in without EPA coming in and say, well, you can't do this to this fish, and you've got wildlife, you've got the national grasslands. What happens with that when Carbon Solution comes in? If we want to do work on a road, we got to get that all approved. So has Carbon Solution done that?
Correct. Yes, we are working with all the federal agencies right now, especially what's very pertinent from a federal standpoint is we're working through our U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permit. We're also working with the EPA. We're working with state-level permitting. We had a meeting this afternoon with the South Dakota Departments of Game and Fish and Parks. So we're very actively working with those organizations to ensure that we're following all required regulations.
Well, you do not have a report yet.
Not that I'm aware of.
Having said that, have you requested that the EPA do an environmental impact study
They are already doing one, to the best of my knowledge.
for South Dakota?
I would have to get you a specific answer on that. I don't know that I could give you a specific. To my knowledge, there is one taking place, but let me verify that.
Okay.
Yeah,
You'll get back to us with that?
absolutely, yes.
Because that is one issue that has come up in the last week, and whether that has been requested or not, and I had already visited with the state's attorney so that we could follow up and see if that had been requested of the
Yep.
PUC, so,
Absolutely, we can get an answer back within the week for you all.
okay. Anything else, Doug?
Nope, that was all I wanted to bring up.
So if
Did you have a
this-
question?
Yep, if this is amended like you guys wanna do, is that just taking the zoning thing out of it for the engineering side of stuff? Like instead of 6 feet deep and 1,500 feet back, however they wanna engineer it, they just get to kinda say, that's okay, that's how we're gonna do it now, is that, am I understanding you right or not understanding you right? Like you said, does the zoning board really do anything then if all of a sudden you say we can't control that part of it, you know? Just because it is, I mean, a safety concern too, for some of the stuff to be that deep and that far back from everybody. We know this stuff is very dangerous when it's compressed down like that. I just wanna make sure, understand what you're kinda trying to say.
Well, we can still control the setbacks, that's what we're trying to regulate here. From what the ordinance says, in schools, daycares, churches, residential dwellings, or any structure that has a living quarters within. And that's measured from the property line. So the whole idea that I'm stressing to everybody here is, we have to look at this in the context of a planning and zoning, which is future development. You know, somebody wants to add on to their property, they need to be able to do that. Where we're butting heads is everybody's worried about safety, but we don't control that. We wish we could do more, but we can't. That's the boat we're in.
It's basically compatible uses and the organized development of different types of development and how they're
Correct.
compatible one to the other,
Yep.
and what kind of proximity.
And depth, you're not gonna convince me that depth, or that location, which is what Congress delegated to us, means anything other than a spot on the map. Or that they're gonna have this pipeline go up and down for 2,000 miles. That, no, Congress controls that. Congress delegated that to the Department of Transportation.
This isn't a highway, this isn't like for public use or anything like that. Now you're bringing up private.
That has no distinction in the Pipeline Safety Act.
Well,
It's a pipeline, that's what Congress intended to regulate.
Well, the safety side of stuff does matter, you know, you
It
guys say
does,
don't.
but this
It'd be
is
like
not the right
engineering a
forum for
highway and
that.
saying no damn speed limit on it then. You know, maybe I'm not following this whole thing right, but I think you guys should leave it alone how it
Mr.
is.
Gage, go ahead.
I think your original question on the, when we were asking for a general outline of what they're doing versus the engineered schematics of what they're doing. So, kind of the reason, we want a general outline is gonna give us what they're deciding for depth and where they're kinda going and everything. Now, your engineered is gonna have, I mean, I'm not a pipeline expert, so don't quote me on everything. You're gonna have what kind of fill you're gonna backfill that pipe with and what kind of base it's gonna have underneath that and everything. And the reason that we're not regulating all of those things is because, I mean, we're not the subject matter experts on what needs to be under a pipe. And if we tell them wrong, then we might become liable for that.
makes
But,
sense. It's that
so,
part of
yeah,
it.
that's,
It's like-
and that's where the distinction is between your more, basically your more detailed plan as opposed of a broad plan is what we're still requesting, if I'm not mistaken. We want the broad
There's
base.
two goals here.
And-
One is to get enough information so that way we know what's going in or what's being built is what they applied for in the permit. And two, so 30 years from now, when we're all gone, there's a record of exactly what's there. That permit is sufficient enough to tell whoever what's in the ground, what they were permitted for at the beginning, and that way if there's any expansion, then we can control that. We ran into it with the beef plant. The original city permits for the beef plant were vague. And so then when they came back for their conditional use permit, there was some confusion about what they were originally permitted for. But the reality is that if we start asking for too much of this information, well, then we're tempted to base our decisions on it. So I think if you ask enough questions when they come in for their conditional use permit, whoever the applicant may be, then that permit can be sufficient to give everybody notice, if it's granted.
You mentioned that after 30 years and everything is gone, and after they abandon the line, and the landowner is still stuck with it underneath there, that's the information you're trying to tell me? What I'm saying is that...
And that's not our fight. That's up to landowners with easements, to the federal
Yeah,
government
but-
to figure out decommissioning. We can't control that. I don't know how to say it any other way.
I know, but what I'm saying is that when it's decommissioned, the landowner who granted the easement and their heirs are just gonna be...
Yes.
are
That's
gonna be-
something that landowners should probably be asking
Are
for
gonna be,
when they
we're
grant
gonna
the
be stuck
easement.
with that decommissioned pipeline.
I don't see how that becomes the county's problem.
Well, it doesn't. Because what you're saying is that we can't regulate it, so therefore we have to take what they decided the pipeline.
No, we can regulate the setback.
The
distance
setbacks
for
will all still be in, like the zoning stuff, this is just more like Mike was talking.
Location and routing, that's the power Congress gave to the states, and that South Dakota has foisted upon the county.
Okay, but isn't there other possibilities of regulating decommissioning of the line too?
No, that's federal,
Not within our authority.
not within our authority. And
Oh,
we're
we're-
getting into private landowners' right to contract with any particular project.
It's not the right to contract, we don't have that right to contract. They're telling us we have to contract.
If you wanna fight the eminent domain fight, that's not something for the county to deal with.
Essentially what we're doing, go ahead and correct me if I'm wrong, is within the authority of planning and zoning, it's for compatible use and their proximity to each other in order to be as, least disruptive to each other as possible if you're gonna have different uses in proximity. And, when you're talking about different kinds of things, we have setbacks for trees from right of way, we have setbacks for power lines, depending on how tall they are, for a variety of different reasons, if they're on private property, just a whole bunch of different things. Essentially, what we're trying to do with the information that's available that we're aware of is to set a distance, which was within the authority clearly of planning and zoning to do, of compatible uses for a pipeline of this nature and any other structures, especially those that may be inhabited by humans. And it does also provide for exceptions for those people that are interested in getting a waiver and building closer than that going forward in the future by review. So essentially it says, this is the mark, you can have the mark moved if you make application to have the mark moved of the distance from this proposed pipeline to structures, if you can convince the planning and zoning department and the board to allow that, and they're pretty reasonable people. I spent 20 years on that board, if you make a decent case for it. The restrictions are fairly minimal from a long-term standpoint if you're willing to go through the process if you want to develop closer. But with the information that I believe that we have available to us, this is the determination at this point in time, what the planning and zoning department has researched. The planning and zoning board has reviewed and adopted as a recommendation to this board to adopt for the setbacks of different types of development usage from this proposed pipeline if it goes, with those potential exceptions going forward. The county did exercise its option, according to state law, to put a moratorium on any requests, applications for that for a period of time, which has and had a limitation of 1 year with a 1-year renewal, which along with that had the responsibility for the planning and zoning and the county as a whole to review its ordinances. It wasn't something that was intended or to be permanent. It was something that the responsibility was placed on the county to do its research, take whatever input was made available from anybody who may have an interest or an opinion on the subject. I know that, I made some recommendations, did some research. I know the Planning and Zoning Department made many inquiries about what kind of standards and information is out there anywhere, mostly state of South Dakota, throughout the nation, and actually on an international basis, to try and make a determination. The number is not arbitrary. It's there based on information that's known at this point in time to make a reasonable recommendation on what, for planning and zoning purposes, a reasonable distance is, with accommodations for exceptions by interested parties on an individual case basis. And what we're being asked to do today is to adopt that recommendation. It's as amendable as this is. If there's other information that's brought to light that's considered to be valid going forward, to either expand or reduce that distance or the conditions that might provide for an exception. Is that accurate?
That's correct. We didn't just pull this out of a hat. We worked with outside counsel. I know Brian Jordy, I think he represents a lot of landowners. It's consistent with the memos that he's put forth, or at least the ones that I've seen. And we've done our own research. We've talked with, we got the Planning and Zoning Board, we made a map and tried to figure out what's reasonable and what's fair. That's what the goal of this is. To regulate what we can regulate so we have a defensible ordinance. Because if we can't defend our ordinance, then we end up with nothing. They don't just line item it. It's the whole ordinance is invalid. And then that pipeline is going next to people's houses. So the reality here is we just don't have the level of control that Congress and at the state level. And so we're just taking what we can get.
I have a couple of questions for Carbon Solutions. How many pipelines have run across the frozen tundra? Where are these pipelines? At 4 feet, if you're out in a farmer, you can have a 6-inch post put in a low spot in the ground, and the frost will lift that up a foot. Now, you're gonna put a pipeline in frozen tundra at 4 feet. Is this pipe gonna expand and go with the frost line? The frost line around here, it's a lot deeper than 4 feet sometimes. That would be my concern, and I'm not an engineer, but has an engineer study been done to that effect?
Yes, and there's actually over 11,000 miles of pipelines in South Dakota. Currently, there's...
What, 4 feet though? I mean, I don't know what they're all buried at.
There are, right, water lines are generally gonna be a little deeper because the substance in a water line, water can freeze. But generally, oil, gas pipelines, specifically in North Dakota, those are generally buried between 3 and 4 foot depth of cover. There's thousands of miles of oil and gas pipelines in North Dakota. There is a CO2 pipeline that's 200 miles long in North Dakota. So as a whole, there have been frost heave studies, and what generally happens, a pipe is more flexible than anyone, myself included, would just naturally assume. And so with the ground, as the frost line lowers, as the ground starts to freeze, it kind of shifts as one unit, and so the pipe is able to move. So the pipe won't raise out or float out of the ground, but it will be able to shift with the ground. So for this project specifically, we are still working on, again, it's proven that has been done on other projects, but we are still, in our commitment to safety, doing a very specific frost heave analysis for this project that we're working on. So one of the things with this project is CO2 is currently being captured in the U.S. CO2 is currently being transported on pipelines in the U.S. It's currently being sequestered in the U.S. There's nothing that we're doing that's new. We're just putting it together in a way that benefits ethanol plants in the Midwest. That hasn't been done previously just because it has to do with a more agriculture-based thing than an oil and gas-based industry.
When you guys started this whole deal, you came around, you started all the meetings back whenever. You told us that if you were a landowner and you wanted it 6 foot deep, yep, we'll go ahead and do that, 6 foot deep. You guys still stand by your word on that stuff when, if it comes through or going through our fields? I mean, we've sunk combines and grain carts a hell of a lot deeper than 4 feet. I mean, those tires are as tall as I am, they've been in the ground the entire way. Because then I know I've heard in your wording, the easements, that you guys are wiping your hands of liability, and we can't get farm insurance on this stuff either, so who, what if a guy wants it 7, 8 feet deep? you know, is that something you guys are still willing to do? You said that you're working with landowners and all that, which, I mean, now you're suing landowners, I'm one of them, just because we don't want you out there to do your tests and do whatever. It's not, that land ain't for sale there, but you get to come bulldoze trees and come right through the guys' cow lots and everything for your guys' pockets all be lined. So, I don't know, I'm just seeing if your word was still there for that.
Yeah, I was at a landowner meeting in northern South Dakota last week, and the individual asked for 6-foot depth of cover, and it wasn't a question. That absolutely is something we're still able to do.
Any other comments, questions? Ross, so you're proposing making,
I would propose that under 4.0706, and then you go down to section 6, part B, and I'm looking at the mini ag one, but they would need to be amended to be consistent across all the districts. It should read, the zoning board of adjustment, well, that one isn't right either, may reduce the minimum setback of a pipeline facility project, so you'd insert pipeline facility, after there is a complete review of the setback waivers, and the project plans and a presentation has been submitted to the zoning administrator and zoning board of adjustment.
you're eliminating materials list, engineering, design, documents, and construction plans.
Yes,
From
and then,
that.
and then we're making it more clear that the plans would be submitted, and that the setback waivers need to be reviewed, if any.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, sir.
Can I sit up here?
Absolutely.
Well, good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for inviting me in, or I guess allowing us to come in.
For those online on the phone, would you identify
Yes.
yourself, please?
I'm Jim Sire. I'm the CEO of Glacial Lakes Energy. We are the owner of 2 of the 3 plants doing business in the Aberdeen area. I'm going to read this and keep me on task a little better. First, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for your support of the past permits for our Aberdeen plant. We've owned it about 2.5 years, and we've done a lot of work out there. I'll get into that in a little bit, but we've enjoyed the support of this county and this community. I'd also like to thank you for helping us pioneer the Premium E30 campaign in the county fleet. That was very important for us. That was pioneering for the area. You even stepped ahead of folks in Watertown, which caught them off guard a little bit over there, which is kind of our home area. But we, as a result of that, we picked up a lot of local support through the Aberdeen News. The economic impact of GLE and the ethanol industry on the Aberdeen area is nothing short of phenomenal. GLE represents around 3/4 or 200 million of the 260 million gallons produced in this area. There's 3 plants within 20 miles of Aberdeen. That production level within one county is unequaled in South Dakota, Minnesota, or North Dakota, and you should be very proud of it. This production creates demand for 90 million bushels of corn. Now, Brown County, on average, produces 45 million bushels of corn. So you have become a hub for the processing of corn for the surrounding area as well. In 2022, GLE paid approximately $340 million for the purchase of corn to operate our 2 plants. Over the past 5 years, 2.5 years we've owned Aberdeen Energy on the west side of town here, we've spent $1.5 billion on the purchase of local corn. Although we do not rail any corn in. That corn flows from as far as Gettysburg, all the way from Linton, North Dakota, to the east, to the south. We bring corn out of Miller for these plants. So this corn is coming into Brown County and Aberdeen to be processed. In addition to generating a strong demand for locally grown corn and hundreds of millions of dollars in additional revenue for local corn producers, There are other statistics that you might find of interest. As I mentioned, since we acquired the Aberdeen plant 2.5 years ago, we have spent almost $23 million in expansion, efficiency, and upgrade projects, including $5.5 million on a grain expansion, $8.2 million on a fermenter expansion, $2.3 million on a milling expansion. We continue to purchase millions in goods and services locally each year, and we are currently in the planning stages to spend $10 to $20 million. That's just on the Aberdeen plant, west of here, on Old Highway 12. More than the future $10 to $20 million more on future projects to improve our efficiency and lower our CI score. Our Mina plant is located 3 miles outside of Brown County. Like many other residents and businesses outside of Brown County, our Mina plant heavily depends on the Aberdeen community for labor, emergency services, contractors, and numerous goods and services to keep the plant operating. Since construction in 2008, we have spent over $70 million on the Mina plant expansion and efficiency projects. Again, we currently are in the planning stages to spend another $20 to $30 million more on future projects to improve our efficiency and lower our CI score. In short, we've spent nearly $100 million on these two plants and may spend another $50 million in the next 2 to 3 years. The payroll for our 100 employees between the two plants was more than $6 million last year, and we continue to increase wages across the board to attract and retain the needed labor. We offer an excellent benefits package equal to about 1/3 of our payroll. This past fiscal year, we paid out over $8.7 million to shareholders in Brown County and counties that touch Brown County. There is no way we can afford to ignore what markets the size of California, Canada, and the West Coast are demanding. Any plant without a low CI score is already disadvantaged today. They're already disadvantaged, and will become more so in the future. If our Aberdeen plant is not allowed to lower its score via the proposed ordinance, we will need to make some very difficult and unpopular decisions about its future. It would not be prudent for us to continue to invest the capital in that facility with a questionable future. This will eventually impact Brown County producers and the entire Aberdeen economy as the local corn market weakens. Corn demand will decline, taking local land values with it, and tax revenues as well. If the reason for the setback is over concerns for safety, we are willing to direct Summit to have their experts come here and sit down with you, much like the opposition's attorneys have, to answer questions and mitigate your concerns. With our solid commitment to Aberdeen, please consider GLE as your partner both today and in the future. With 4 plants and a substantial volume in the pipeline, we have the ability to get immediate responses. Given the impact that this proposed ordinance could have on our 100 Aberdeen employees, our 600-plus Brown County area shareholders, our Brown County area producers, and the economic health of the entire area, GLE respectfully requests you to decline the proposed ordinance, or at a minimum, table it until reasons for its existence can be further discussed and assessed. Thank you for your patience, and we really do value and appreciate our presence in Brown County. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
So when you read the ordinance, Mr. Sire, obviously the setback is 1,500 feet, but it also provides for setback waivers if it goes through the process and the Planning and Zoning Board and the process to be approved, so that should address any concerns if 1,500 is not the right number. So do the setback waivers address some of the issues that you're concerned about?
Not really. I mean, what if somebody won't grant a waiver next to our plant out there? I mean, according to the map, it looks like it would even extend to the north. So what if we can't get a waiver?
Well, the other side of that is, as commissioners, we'll have problems with people saying their land and their houses have been devalued. What do we do with that? The second thing is, Aberdeen hasn't grown substantially great in a number of years. But if you do that out there, you're gonna take economic development away from the city. What are you gonna gain at that point? Nobody's gonna do a business if you got 500 feet of pipe in front of you. I mean, you can see people's thinking, and I'm not against it. I just look at, if I was in that situation, would I want to pipe 500 feet from my backyard? You know, or am I gonna build a business out there? 500 feet or 300 feet or whatever you're gonna do with it. All we're trying to do is make sure economic development can be protected, and the homeowners where this is gonna go by, they're not gonna beat our door down saying their property's been devalued. What do we do with that? And I guess that's my concern, and you know, you probably talk about the ethanol plants. This is probably the burr in your side, because it sits just on the west side of Aberdeen. If the other ones, I'm sure the people in Mina, you're not worried about the town of Ipswich expanding out to Mina. You're not worried about Mina expanding, so you're pretty safe there. But when you got Aberdeen approximately as close as it is, we may have a problem with economic development in 5 years, 10 years. And I don't know how you overcome that.
And I appreciate the questions and comments. I guess, as commissioners, you're gonna have to balance that potential economic issue against the issues that I just described. If we pull that plant out of here, if other counties follow suit with this ordinance and we can't get hooked up in Mina, that's gonna represent a huge vacuum. And producers in this area will have one place to go, and that's the unit shippers out west of town or east of town. That's gonna affect your corn basis. So you gotta look at those two economic issues. And coming back maybe to the devaluation of property, you know, I don't know where the natural gas pipeline comes into Aberdeen. I apologize that I don't know that. I know in Watertown it comes from the southwest. There's houses that are within 100 feet of that pipeline. And I'm not aware that those houses are devalued. So somehow there was a acceptance of that, and I guess what I'm asking you, if there's more analysis needed, is there a way to get to that point with this pipeline? Everybody's afraid of it. They've seen the videos. I've seen the videos. The videos are pretty dramatic. I don't disagree with you that there should be a setback of some sort. But if you guys are concerned, as you should be, as elected officials, about the safety, you know, and shame on GLE for not being a little more proactive up here in this whole process. You know, and I hear some of this discussion occurring. I wish we had been here to try to maybe provide a little more input along the way. But we're here now, and we're willing to engage and get people on site, sit down, and see if we can come to some place that's a little more amenable, so that we don't have to shut down this Aberdeen plant in the future.
Go ahead, Mike.
She said some setback would be okay. What in your mind would be a setback that would be?
You know, I have not seen any of the statistics of how close we are, Mr. Gage. I just don't know. You know, I guess what I'm asking for is, you know, we're willing to get involved. We're willing to bring Summit to the table. Let's sit down with maps. Let's sit down with, you know, landowners, whatever, and try to figure out what that might be. I mean, I heard Mike say here that he, you know, that there was quite a little effort put into getting to this 1,500. We have a concern whether we can even get out of the plant. And you know, out in the country, you might be able to swing it around a little further and avoid some of that. And you're right, Watertown presents a potential problem. Aberdeen presents a potential problem. Huron presents a potential problem to pass behind residents in Huron. And, you know, we have, you know, maybe there's less concern in those areas than there is here. but we only have really one plant of our four that's kinda out in the middle of nowhere, and then the other plant in Brown County, the Poet plant, is, you know, I don't know much about that, but it would seem to me that they could potentially avoid and be within the 1,500 feet. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Well, kind of, I mean, the reason that I asked that is even if we were to change this down to a 200-foot setback, you guys have issues getting in and out of this plant on the west side, because you're gonna need a waiver to get it. I mean, you don't own the land going all the way to the south there, so you're gonna have to get waivers from the landowners.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, the problem is gonna be there if there's a setback, no matter actually what the distance. I mean, it just becomes a compound problem the bigger it gets. I mean, if it's a 1 mile setback, you gotta talk to that many more landlords. 1,500, it's this. 100, you still gotta talk to the people on both sides of that. So, I mean, if you're okay with a setback on it, I mean, even if it's 100, you still have the same problem if it's 1,500. It's just more or less people. You're still gonna have to deal with them to get there, and I think that we need to have a setback of some nature. I don't think it's gonna kill the project. I mean,
There is a number, I mean, but I can't give that to you here and now, because I haven't looked at the maps that close.
I didn't mean you had to give an exact, but do you see my point, though, as far as...
I do.
You're gonna have a problem getting into these other, and not just Aberdeen, to the other ones that have, you know, Huron and Watersound, I know where those sit. I mean, if they have any setback, it's gonna be an issue anyways to get a pipe in there, even, I mean, no matter what our setback is. I think when we came up with this, I mean, we tried to get something, I mean, that wasn't, I don't know, I mean, you're trying to base on all the information out there, and it's not a lot of good information.
And
that's where we ended up with, that we felt it was fair to both sides, if this does go through, that, you know.
I believe there's a number out there. I just, without kind of walking foot by foot down that pipe and seeing what we're passing by, I just don't think that I can just throw out a number.
Can you tell us what the Cottington County setback is?
I do not know that.
Okay.
They didn't change any ordinance,
Okay.
to my knowledge.
Okay.
And neither did Beetle County, to my
Okay.
knowledge.
Sir, did you have a question back there?
Hi, Arnie Sportsnet for any of you guys. Does anybody know the price of corn in Brown County this morning? Can't look at your phone, just, you know?
I don't, but I bet you can tell us.
Okay, so the rail prices, or the non-ethanol prices, are about $6.27 a few minutes ago. Glacial Lakes is $6.54 or $6.52, so about 25 cents. That's not unnormal. It could be anywhere from 15 to 25 cents a bushel for any of the farmers in here. And that goes up and down a little bit. So the economic benefit, Doug, to your question about future economic benefit is, don't forget about the economic benefit that you already have. That equals about $9 million a year from what's around just in Brown County, and I'm including the Poet plant and the Glacial Lakes Aberdeen plant, not the Moina plant. You know, if those two plants grind about 100,000 bushel a year between them, I don't know how far I'm off, but fairly close to that, I think. So, just to answer your point, Doug, is you have a huge economic benefit right now to this county. So, my grandfather, he'd always say, excuse me, you know, give everybody the benefit of the doubt that they have good intentions, and then use time to figure out whether those good intentions are meant well. I fully believe you guys are strongly supportive of the ethanol industry in Brown County. You've shown it before. I would hope you would continue that. I know Glacial Lakes is supportive of the economic industry, the ag industry in South Dakota, and especially Brown County. Now, there's something that hasn't happened here, and I can tell it just by being the first time at one of these meetings. You guys have not talked enough. You should have the answers, how far your setbacks need to be. You guys should be willing to come up with a way to make those work. Because this is a big driver. This is the #1 industry in your county. You know, so, I can't believe, some of the stories I hear from your department. Public relations is something your department needs to work on in Brown County. If I rented land, like how the way that I've heard you guys have tried to acquire easement, I'd be looking for a job here. So I encourage you to consider tabling this for a short time, because you've had a year to get together, and I won't put the blame on you, but I would say I don't believe the three entities here have done everything in a sole purpose of making the best economic situation for Brown County. I think you all can do more, but you need to talk to each other. You need to have answers. You need to improve your skills as a company in acquiring easements. You guys have to promote Brown County. You have to protect landowners' rights. I believe that 100%, but you also have to protect the economic interest of the county. And so I would highly encourage you to table this for a short time, 30 days, 60 days, something, and you come with your options, come with the numbers that you can give them. They need to know, what do you want for setbacks? And then you can't worry about Watertown or Huron. You need to worry about Brown County. And the crux of the Brown County problem is getting out of the Aberdeen plant. You guys need to solve that problem. You need to get those people in that first couple miles coming out of there. You need to get them on board. If you can't get them on board in 30 days, pass your ordinance. Or 60 days, whatever. I'm not sure I'm giving you the right timetable, but you guys need to talk together and have answers for each other.
60 more than we have right now.
It's 60 more than we have right now. And all I'm suggesting is compromise here. There's got to be a way we can work together instead of just being like this. I know you guys support economic development. You already have it. Don't lose it. You can do better. Your company can do better. You need to have some answers for it.
Drew, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. So, I guess first of all, I appreciate everybody being here. So looking at the route of this, and I'm glad that map is up there, it seems like the route was put up based on total distance from point A to point B, from the Aberdeen plant to the Minot plant. What's the shortest distance? But the issue that I've had, the issue that's been brought up to me and that's been discussed, is going to be, is that route the best route for Brown County, or the best route for future economic development, or for landowners? Coming south of the Aberdeen plant, we know there's quite a bit of stuff just directly south. As you go by Old Highway 12 and you cross Highway 12, we know there's houses and businesses in that area. Then you continue on straight west, basically along that Highway 12 corridor, and the issue with that is, I guess regardless of safety, we could sit here and talk all day long about safety, whether it's 100% perfectly safe or if it's going to blow up and you're going to have a catastrophe, or anywhere in the middle. That's not really the point. The point is, people are going to have ideas of whether or not this is safe, and those ideas, those thoughts in people's minds probably aren't going to change. Will having a pipeline right along the Highway 12 corridor impact land values? I think it will, to a point. You're going to be going by homes, you're going to be going by existing businesses, you're going to be going by land that could be developed in the next 5 to 10 years. I don't think that route on that map is in the best interest. Even if this pipeline is going to happen for sure, and we don't know that yet, but if it was going to happen for sure, I don't know that route is the best one for Brown County as a whole, because we do know that when you're talking about economic development in a city or a county, it's going to be along one of the major highways, Highway 12 going west of Aberdeen being that. And so for this pipeline to follow Highway 12 so closely is a concern for me I'm just wondering, is there a route that would go farther away from existing homes? Obviously, no matter what route you go, you're going to be near someone's home or someone's business. But I'm just looking at that map and I'm thinking there's got to be a better way that deals with fewer homes, fewer businesses, and also future economic development issues. So that's just kind of my 2 cents there. That would be more for Summit, as you guys, are the ones who develop your routes. That would be my concern, is mainly economic development and existing homes that are already within that corridor.
Just a quick response to that, Drew. I guess you say that would be more for Summit. I would prefer to see, as Arnie says, that Summit folks at the county here, whoever you designate, whether it's emergency management or whomever, and we're going to have more of an interest up around the plant site. We have selected a place on the plant where that compressor, it's called a compressor station, is going to be. It could be moved if that's a problem, but we only have so much movement on the plant. I mean, the plant isn't so large that we can take it from this side to that side.
Yeah, and I don't want to pick the route, I'm not going to say it goes north or south or east or west, but hypothetically, if it went, just say northwest from the plant, knowing the city of Aberdeen, knowing rural western Brown County, I would assume there would be a lot fewer businesses that direction. I know there's some, in that direction, but I would think there'd be less.
I think it's worth the question.
Where this proposal goes now.
But I'd also want to have, some of your folks here in the county in the room for that meeting, just to kind of step through some of this.
And the folks that's going by should make sure they're at the meetings also,
Right.
the businesses. I mean, the county, 100%, we are behind ethanol, well, race corn. Looks to me like the issue is this whole carbon capture, hulks or whatever, we can get into that, whatever, but the ethanol plants are making record profits, and we're doing this. We're worried about California, for Christ's sake. Let's keep it local, worry about here.
And
we were making record profits last year. Check our financials. We lost $5 million this last quarter.
It's not
and this quarter is much better.
Not because of the carbon thing, you guys.
Well, but
you guys jumped in bed with the wrong company. Now you're all trying to play catch up and make this right for everybody. These guys sit here and tell us how nice and how good they're going to work with everybody, and 7 days later they're suing the Brown County Commission. 10 days later they're going to sue anybody who doesn't get away. They just throw money at and take them outside and have those special talks. Just like your special little meetings, if everything keeps it all in the same room so everybody can hear it, maybe some things get worked out. But how you guys have went about the whole thing, especially Summit, has been absolutely ridiculous.
Just a comment about, you made about record profits, and we did have a good year last year. It was totally driven by the fact that product could not get to market because railroads weren't performing. That's 100% what happened. There was more days of supply of ethanol, days of supply on the market than we've had in any other year, but it couldn't get to market. That's what padded our pocketbooks.
Well, it should be that way. Again, then the railroad's falling apart across the country the way it looks.
Margins are better today than they were a week ago, but we lost $5 million last quarter. We're probably going to have to pay a negative number this quarter too. So we are back to more normal thin margins. And I'm sorry, sir, but we cannot ignore a market that's over 100 million people when we're on the western side of the Corn Belt. Doesn't pay to ship ethanol to Chicago or New York. Because
does California want to be all electric? See, we don't know that.
This is the only way to keep ethanol competitive, is to lower our CI score. Okay.
Go ahead. One more comment there too, about the comment that was made about potentially tabling this. I think in a perfect world that could be the right decision, but also the county right now is being sued, for the moratorium. And so for us to be responsible, we do have to do something. And just kind of a question, I think I know the answer, but if we were to adopt this today, it would be possible to come again in the future and make changes again, correct?
Well, absolutely. How many times do you guys amend any ordinance?
So, and that's what I thought, and so looking at this, I do think to be responsible to the citizens of Brown County, we do need to have something in place, whether it's this or something else, we do have to have some ordinance in. So whether we pass this today, it's not impossible to come back at a future date and make changes, but we can't just survive here having this moratorium, a perpetual moratorium or a 2-year moratorium, because I don't think that's responsible to have that just on as long as possible either.
I forget
Well, let me clarify real quick. It's a
first-year moratorium.
It's a 1-year moratorium
I think it was put in place
that
in
can
May,
be
I believe.
that can be renewed for another year. That would take another vote and another action. The moratorium as it currently exists expires in one year from the date it was voted in.
What is that date, Dwayne?
I believe it was in May, but I'd have to look back at the minutes. Do you remember, Lynn? We'd have to look back at the minutes, but I think it was May. Does anyone else remember? May sounds about right.
Was it the same time as State County, or was it before State?
I think we did ours before Spain.
I think it was in July.
July, okay. So it might have been June then, but it was right in that timeline, May or June. Well, we'll get that verified.
And the specific date doesn't really, it was May or June,
Right.
coming up.
Right.
And I just mean it's not fair for us as a county to leave a moratorium on as long as we possibly can when we think we have other solutions that are viable.
I think our planning and zoning department and our planning and zoning board have put a lot of time, energy, effort, and research into what we have before us today and came up with what they felt was a reasonable ordinance, reasonable numbers, reasonable setbacks. We've already changed the depth from 6 to 4, or from 6 to 4, to be more in compliance with the federal guidelines. So we've put a lot of effort and energy into this. And did Ross say it was in May?
To be clear, we are not regulating depth
Right.
at all. We didn't change. This ordinance has no depth regulation in it.
That's what I'm saying. We've eliminated that, so we...
Correct.
Right, so that, the depth is... All right, so what's the date here?
I think July.
I'm sorry, 19th of July it was found. So we did do it on the 19th of July, so we do have a little bit of time before the moratorium of this 1 year. Go ahead.
I have a question. You said that you took several recommendations from organizations to be able to find the right number, including Brian Jordry, who is vocally opposed to it. So what were the other organizations?
We didn't get, our interpretation of the Federal Pipeline Safety Act and what the counties can regulate is consistent with memos that Mr. Jordy has written.
So
Our interpretation and outside counsel's interpretation, Richardson, and Brian Jordy's interpretation of what the county can regulate under the Federal Pipeline Safety Act is all consistent. We didn't consult with Mr. Jordy on this. I want to be perfectly clear. We're saying it's consistent with the interpretation from the letters and memos he has written as far as what the county has left to regulate. What the county has left to regulate, by our interpretation, is reflected in this ordinance. Under state and federal law, what we are regulating in this ordinance, which is siting and surface use, is reflected in that ordinance.
So the recommendation came from the Federal Pipeline Safety Act?
Are you talking about the number, the 1,500 feet?
Yes.
That was a product of the Board of Adjustment. We had no recommendations on that. They pulled the map out, and they decided what they felt was
Now,
reasonable.
the federal act doesn't say it shall be this setback or that setback. It does say, well, our interpretation is that the counties have the ability to regulate that setback and surface use.
also, Drew, to your comment, and I agree, you have responsibility, but you also have a little window of time here, no different than last week or the month before or the 12 months before that you put the moratorium on here. Use that little bit of time as one last chance for this to work, to get a compromise. You're not going to be opening a window of not having anything. You can go back and do this whatever time you feel you have to do it before that moratorium is up. But use this little window. Maybe there is a way that you guys can come to a common understanding, and you guys have to figure out a way to get out of Aberdeen. Our talk is mute unless you get out of those first couple miles of Aberdeen. And that means you're going to have to get those people to agree to something. And if you can't do that, sign your ordinance, but give them a little time to see if that's possible. You are doing your responsibility right now because you have the moratorium in place, and you have this all ready to go. And maybe things will be a little more exact in everybody's camp. Time is a good thing. It's on a benefit for you guys here. Use it.
Go ahead.
I have one other thing. So I'm Dana Lewis from Summit, and I just wanted to give you a couple of numbers when you talk about, we haven't done a very good job here in Aberdeen. And project-wide, we're at 66%. In South Dakota, we're also at 66%. In Brown County, we're at 28% of right-of-way miles that we have agreed with landowners. And McPherson County is at 28% as well. Once we leave this area, Spink County is at 61%, Clark County is at 91%, Beetle is at 84%, Edmonds is at 78%. And so we really have struggled up in this area to come to agreements with landowners. For whatever reason that is, I don't know, but I'm telling you that I'm going to do everything I can to work with you and these landowners to try and come to some agreement. We really have struggled, and I think we need to figure out why that is. We've gotten some feedback through Jim from members that he has talked to, and I think it's all good information, but we recognize we have struggled, and we're going to do everything we can to fix that, and we want to start with working with you guys.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm not sure if I'm able to. I can just show just kind of a map of some of the pipelines in the area, and I apologize it's not like printed out or anything. So, introduction, I'm Aaron Eldridge, project manager for Summit Carbon Solutions. And so, obviously we've all mentioned this, we could talk about safety all day, and I think that's a valid concern for a lot of individuals. Certainly when we talk about setbacks, that's always a main concern. But one thing I do want to address is the concern of commercial development or potential expansion. And so just right now I have Aberdeen pulled up. You can kind of see, let me make sure this is bright. Oh, that's my sound. There we go. Right now, Aberdeen is right over here. This green line is a active natural gas line that comes in on the south side. If you zoom in, it's just south of Melgard, about half a mile east of the high school. There is a house that looks like it's a relatively within the past 20 years construction. I'm not from Aberdeen, so I couldn't speak for that. There is a crude line that actually runs just on the east side of or I should say refined products line. I'm not sure if it's crude or liquid gas, but runs on the east side of the Glacial Lakes plant here. So there are pipelines that already are in and around the city that many individuals in this city probably don't even know about. Probably some of those that even live near it aren't aware of. The other thing I'd like to point out, this one, it's not in the area right around here, but obviously our pipeline goes reasonably close to Sioux Falls as well. And so there's a lot of expansion. Sioux Falls is a place that's been blowing up recently, and the towns surrounding Sioux Falls. And so I'd just like to point out, once this loads, if it will for me, the city of Hartford, right here. So this is Hartford. This is a gas line that runs on the eastern side of the city, and this is a neighborhood on a golf course that's a reasonably high-scale neighborhood that was built after the pipeline was put in, and you can see it is 40 feet from the pipeline is the backs of individuals' homes. And this is Hartford, this is a place where people are moving, this is expansion right here. And so we have examples, we have seen examples where pipelines in the ground that are operating safely do not hinder commercial development. I've spent time in a lot of different states, whether that's Indiana, Ohio, Texas, or here. There's a lot of neighborhoods that you may have a divided road down the middle, and in that middle is the pipeline. And they didn't build the pipeline, the road over top of the pipeline, but immediately next to it. I've been in homes where their backyard had a pipeline going through it, and we do see that in Hartford as well. And so there are pipelines in Aberdeen that I'm sure many are unaware of. There's pipelines in other populated areas in the state as well. And so I know that's a big concern too, right? Right behind safety is economic development. And we don't want to hinder that either, but we truly believe, and we have examples of how that hasn't previously, and that we don't believe that would hinder any of the economic development of the state. The other thing I would like to mention, just I get to meet with landowners as frequently as I'm able to. So I've been all over this state and a couple other states, but mostly South Dakota, meeting with landowners. And I would like to make it clear that if a 1,500-foot setback, and potentially, again, any setback were to go in Brown County, I have no confidence that we would be able to get waivers to be able to get into the Glacial Lake Aberdeen plant. So when we submit our permit to the PUC, we have to give them a corridor, and that corridor, it's unfortunate, you have to submit the corridor, you have to submit the applications to the PUC before you're really able to start doing a lot of work with landowners. And so we're kind of hemmed in on certain ways on where this pipeline can go, based on the PUC application. Now the route, it wasn't just put up willy-nilly. And one thing, we can send you all some maps of Brown County. That's a fairly accurate map. It's not just a direct east to west line south of the highway. It goes around some shelter belts and where we have worked with landowners. So it's a little more squiggly than just us going down and cutting straight across. I do want to point that out. So I can do my best to get you all a better map of what that does look like. But when it comes to where the pipeline is routed, we initially, as a company, as someone who's trying to optimize costs, what you're going to do is figure out where do we need to go and what's the shortest way to get there, right? It's just reasonable what you would do. From that point, we then had a team that looked at every inch of that line and was able to identify whether it was homes, properties, shelter belts, native lands, wetlands, different opportunities for us to move that line to make it a more optimal route. And so the route wasn't just a what's the shortest route possible, it was a hey, initially here's our shortest route, here's in an ideal world where there's potentially nothing built and we can build this wherever, this is what we were going to do, and then how do we actually optimize that route, not just to be beneficial to us, but to make sure we're looking out for any of the permitting requirements, to make sure that we are being good stewards where we're at. And then we've made over 3,500 route changes for landowners on this project, over 850 in South Dakota alone. And so we are truly doing what we can to negotiate, but I think you all will understand that you get to a point in the negotiation where, if you're trying to negotiate to buy a car and you really want to make a good deal on this, and somebody says, hey, this car is going to cost you $17 million, like it's a 98 Honda Civic, I don't know that I can do that, but for whatever reason, that car is the one thing that stops you from being able to have the economic impact that this project will have. There's a point that those negotiations can't continue, and unfortunately, with in some areas, we're at a point where we're not able to negotiate to be able to work with landowners because they just won't talk to us anymore. So I won't talk for too much longer. I just do want to say, if there's opportunities for myself, for others, again, our director of safety, for other individuals with the company to come up and speak with you all, I would be more than happy to do so. I would welcome that opportunity. I know last time I was here, we had chatted, and the request was that we didn't hop on the agenda here. It tends to bring a crowd, and these meetings go a little longer than the other ones tend to. But if there's opportunities for us to be able to talk and work through things with you all, we would welcome those opportunities.
Okay, Commissioner Gage is first.
A couple questions for you. When you guys are setting that route then, what are you looking at for, when you're looking at houses and setback, what number are you guys using?
Yeah, so I'm not sure. We don't have any homes on the route that are within 250 feet of the pipeline. And there are route changes that we have found after the fact that, oh man, this got missed. We made sure that got changed. I believe the number's actually a little further than that. But where our concern is that if there are any setbacks on the line and that gets pushed through, as you guys are well aware, a lot of counties look at other counties to see what's happening. And while there's a lot of talk that's happening here and a lot of research that's going into making sure this works for everybody, not all the other counties are doing that. And so as we're talking here, there's counties that have 2-mile setbacks that someone has proposed. And so if even one goes through with any kind of number, we can't have the confidence that a county is going to be able and willing to do the research to find that number. And so that's where we're counting on the PHMSA requirements, the state requirements, and then the actual ability of the individual landowners to be able to negotiate their own easements. And that is one other concern we do, Summit has with the ordinance. I truly believe planning and zoning is a reasonable board, but it's hard for us to be able to plan something where not only do we have to get an agreement with that landowner, but we have to have the planning and zoning board sign off on that, and there's no stipulations that say if you meet these, this will get approved. It's hard for us to be able to bank on that. And so we do have a lot of concerns with the ordinance. We feel that there are economic impacts, negative economic impacts of that ordinance that maybe haven't been thoroughly pulled out. And so we would just like to be able to have the open conversations with you all when we can. So obviously no surprise to anyone, we would support, voting no on the ordinance or having more opportunities to meet with you all to talk through what a mutually agreeable thing could look like.
Jerry, you were next.
I have just a comment for the folks in Summit, the frustration that you're having right now from the standpoint of why isn't this going faster and better? What you're trying to buy is not for sale. That's the reality of it. And people are hooking up to any reasons that we believe will impede or not lead to success for you. What you're asking for is not for sale. It's that simple. You can't compensate for the damage that you're going to do to the value of the property. And there's no way on God's green earth that compensation that you're offering or can offer will compensate for the changes in the value of the property that we have left after you come by with your pipeline. It's impossible. Stop and think about it. And so that's the long and the short of it, I think. I mean, you can look at all these other things, talk about all the economics, and the economics are there, I understand that. But, this is South Dakota, hey. We didn't get here by accident. We came here because, when I say we, our families came here because there was a reason to come here. We like what we have, we're independent, and that's what we want to stay. And so, I'm sorry, I can understand your frustration, but I think that's really the basic reasons why you're having a struggle.
Commissioner Weeks, did you have something to add?
Unfortunately, because of some technical difficulties, we're not able to see who's participating electronically, but I believe there are some folks that may have some comments, and I'd like to ask the chair to recognize if anyone who's online has any input or comments at this point, if you don't mind.
We do have access to that here. Is there anyone out there on the phone or online that would like to offer some testimony this morning? So just identify yourself and you'll be recognized.
Dwayne, Craig Shoneman.
Yes, go ahead, Craig. Speak up, please.
Yep. Sorry about that. I'll do the best I can. I'm in a vehicle. Yeah, lots of good discussion this morning. What is the right setback? And I know that planning and zoning have done a great job of trying to put something together. A couple points. They always talk about the PIMSA requirements. Right now they're looking at CO2 regulations. They're not out there yet. We talk about California. California's got a 1-year moratorium on CO2 pipelines. And we talk about all the other pipelines. 2 of those pipelines directly cross our pipeline. The one that goes to the KNAPP pipeline, the old KNAPP pipeline, the old Northern Border pipeline. So clearly familiar with what pipelines do and how they impact your property. But I think you need to keep your eye on the ball here. Is the reason the setbacks are in place is for a sound economic development. And unfortunately, the ethanol plants were built. They needed rail, electricity, and water. And Aberdeen, Watertown, they're all in a precarious situation because they were located next to cities. So how do we get it out of there? It's a tough situation, but I think that planning and zoning has done a good job of trying to put something in place. What is that magic number? Obviously any waiver or setback, someone is not going to agree to. They want to, in my opinion, they just want an open book to put it where they want without any concern to what the county tried to long-range look at. Now, I don't know. I don't know if CO2 can be transported to the minor plant via transportation or vehicle. I don't know. It's a tough situation getting out of Aberdeen, whether it's north or south or west. It's a tough situation. And for us, when you go south out of the plant, I've seen lots of different routes that have come to play. I can't even consider the first route because it reminds me of the etchy-sketchy boards we grew up with and somebody just drawing lines. So to say they've changed it 350 times, that's just because I would say their lack of planning or professionalism and just thinking they were going to put it in. Now, in the negotiations, they have changed the route. I don't know exactly where that route goes because I know that one of my neighbors has signed, and originally that particular parcel was not identified to cross it the way it is. But I think we have to have some reasonable setback in there, and I think planning and zoning has done a good job of trying to address that reasonable setback.
Thank you, Craig. Anything else? Anyone else out there that would like to comment?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes, Elizabeth Burns Thompson, on behalf of Navigator CO2. We do not have a proposed route in the county yet. We do have a contract with the Poet facility in the county, so we've begun some of that initial routing work. I think much of what's been discussed here today. We really would appreciate the opportunity to be part of any follow-up conversations in relation to what the county would like to see preemptively on those routing discussions. To date, we do have an initial phase 1 footprint in the state that predominantly is down in the further southeast corner today, but we do have expansion plans up to additional Poet facilities. We've done a robust amount of safety outreach to the first responders, county boards, local planning and zoning, where that initial footprint has been. So apologies, we have not meant to ignore Brown County in any means whatsoever. We just don't have that route kind of practically identified just yet. But we do welcome the opportunity to be part of the conversations here, as well as moving forward, and happy to have some more technical conversations too, as it relates to our project, engineering, construction, design, and all of the above. So,
All right, if you could email your contact information to the Brown County Auditor, that way we have your name and number in the event that we have further meetings.
absolutely, we appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would care to comment this morning? Commissioner Gage.
And a question for you guys. This is ballpark numbers. I don't expect you to have the exact numbers off, but if you said that that line is roughly in the ballpark of where you're thinking, right, on there? Okay. So from the ethanol plant line going south, and then it goes back to the west there, so you're looking at whatever, let's just go to the west there, maybe 1 mile, half a mile, or something like that. In that area there, how many easements do you have, percentage-wise of the land?
I don't know off the top of my head. I do know we have some on both sides. We have some individuals that are not open to it, and we do have some that have signed. I don't know that off the top of my head. The reason I know that is because I met with one of those landowners a couple weeks back, and so I looked at the area right around that, but I couldn't actually give you a number. I just know that some of the neighbors had signed, some of their neighbors had not.
Okay.
But,
Didn't you say 28% earlier?
as a
Brown
countywide, yeah, 28%, so it's...
That includes the northwest part of the county as well, by Elm Lake, correct?
It starts, at the bottom, where it connects to Spin County.
Yeah.
So that's the whole.
But that also includes the portion of the pipeline that goes through the northwest part of the county?
So, we actually go straight from McPherson up to North Dakota. We don't cut through Brown County on the northwest corner. So
Just in the southwest corner.
Okay, did that change? 'Cause
Yeah,
I thought I
no.
saw a map that showed that it
We
went
do-
through a narrow portion of...
Right, I recall.
we do have
extreme
the...
northwest portion.
Okay, yeah, I would say we do have the southwest corner. That's where our main line would run through.
Yeah.
And then coming over from Minot Lake. I am not aware of any major changes that took place in that southwest corner. So I can't...
I just
speak
know
to
I
that.
had received a map at some point that showed it, we knew the southwest corner and then
Yeah.
this, of course. I saw a map that showed the extreme northwest part of the county.
Gotcha.
With a small amount up by the Elm Lake area.
Gotcha. Yeah, we currently do not have that, and we don't have any plans to bring that back south.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else out online or on the phone that would like to offer anything this morning? Is there anyone else in the room? Go ahead, Corey.
Well, I don't know nothing about this, and I shouldn't even speak up, but why don't you fight with one landowner? Why don't you fight with the railroad, running down the railroad track?
Yeah, so...
Simple, connects the two right together.
Yeah, so we are working with the railroad companies. What it comes down to is that as railroads being one of the first major industries in the United States, they got some protections that other industries, and then we say protections, but should really say privileges, that other industries just do not have. And so their easements, they hold tight grips on those that you're...
So you can't even proceed it.
Correct. We can cross under them, and even crossing under them is a very substantial process. But yeah, that's unfortunately just no pipeline of any kind, water lines, anything, are able to go through right-of-ways for railroad.
They're kind of a government in and of themselves.
Yeah.
Chairman, may I make one?
Go ahead, Jim.
Jim Sire again. Just want to remind folks that the line coming off our plant, I believe, is a 6-inch line.
Correct.
6-inch line. That CO2 is going up right now. Certainly, it's going to be compressed. It's going to be going through basically a line like that. 1,500 feet. I don't know if that was taken into consideration when you're, as opposed to a 18-inch line or a 20-inch line. It seemed to me that there'd be a difference there. So I don't know if it starts at 1,500 feet, maybe just the fact that it's a 6-inch line, it could be much, much less.
So at 24, it could be more than maybe.
These people,
if you want to play that card.
Some actual information.
Definitely something that should be considered. The size of the pipe may have an impact on the
24
potential.
2,000
Go ahead.
For us,
board does.
Is that in the context of safety or development? I mean, a pipe in the ground is a pipe in the ground. And I think that's where we run into problems there.
Sure. Go ahead, Mike.
Question for you guys, and I forgot to write your name down, I apologize, but, Mr. Sears said that the 1,500 was too much, but he was okay, I'm misquoting you, that some setback would be okay, correct? I mean, that's
I
kind of
don't know
what
what
you said,
that
right?
number is.
Well, no, I'm not saying the number, I'm just saying
There
some...
likely is a number that would work.
Yeah, anywhere from like, obviously, 6 inches up to 1,500 feet, somewhere in there'd be a number. Are you guys in agreement with that there is a number that, of a setback that you guys would be on board with, or do you want a zero setback? Ideally, I know what you want, I'm saying, I'm asking...
Yeah, the answer of whether that's possible or not is unfortunately something that is above my pay grade, and I would not be able to answer that. Now, if we're able to meet and some other individuals come, that might be a discussion we're able to have. We genuinely do try to, again, have distances between homes and properties as we can, but I am not able to make that decision. Yeah.
Any further discussion here this morning?
Question.
Go ahead, Mike.
From the interested parties here, both online and from here, if we were to postpone this for a period of, say, 60 or 90 days, 60 days would mean 2 planning and zoning meetings, 90 days would mean 3 planning and zoning meetings. Do you have information, are you prepared to participate in the discussions to present information above and beyond what's already been considered in the recommendation, the adoption by the Planning and Zoning Board, as recommended to the county for consideration?
I think that answer depends on what the information is. Obviously, this is not a safety ordinance, so...
Your answer needs to be emphatically yes. If they're not willing to, they're trying to open a window here for you, it's not time to talk. It's time to say, yes, we're gonna do everything we can do. And Jim, it's
Yes.
time for you to say,
Yeah.
yes, we're
We'll
gonna
be
have
there.
a distance.
We'll be there.
These guys are doing their job right there, and you're not helping them any. Come on, I'm here to help you guys, you gotta help yourself. Yes.
We would certainly be at the meeting. We would be happy to participate in the discussions.
Well, we know you don't have any complications if it's zero. 'Cause you just do it.
Oh, but he did
Am I right?
say, I think you said 250 is kind of where you're at.
They won't commit to that, though.
You said 250 or more, possibly what they're looking at, so I mean...
Possibly.
Well, if that's what they're looking at, they already have a number above zero that you guys are looking at to be away from a house. So I mean...
Your window is closing here. You have a chance. Mike gave you a chance. You guys have to stand up and say, absolutely, we will do anything you want us to do. We'll give you any information we can get for you. If you're not there, I'm sitting on with those guys. And I came here to sit with you guys.
We will, and I'm not just saying that because you said that, we will, work with you as much as we can, I mean, we want to make this work. We don't want to be adversaries, we don't want to be on the opposite sides, we want to make this work. So we will come with that information that, and try to come to some agreement. I don't know what's going to happen at that meeting, but we will be there.
So if the commission decides this morning that we want to postpone this for 60 or 90 days, as Commissioner Weiss said, that would give us 2, possibly 3 planning and zone meetings that we could put this item on the agenda for discussion, but it would require, obviously, all interested parties being there, and that's put a lot of a lot of increased pressure back on the Planning and Zoning Board, who's already spent a lot of time on this, but I think it's something that we all need to consider as a way to move forward, get some of these things discussed, discuss the setbacks, discuss the other items that have been brought up here today, and I think that would be a good way to proceed myself.
Dwayne.
Go ahead, Ross.
A couple things. I'm not sure that the changes are substantive enough where it needs to go back to planning and zoning. But if that's what you guys want to do, that's fine. But we're essentially starting over. And I want everybody to be clear on that we've already had all these meetings, and we've done all this, and now we're just gonna start over, and that's fine, we can do that. The other thing is, in no event, I know our outside counsel's gonna hate this, in no event would I recommend going past that July 19th date for a final resolution here, because otherwise then we have to look at extending our moratorium again. So, we can get into July, but any further past that is gonna create more of a headache.
So if we would extend it for 60 days, that would get us through the May, actually the April, May, and June meetings.
Maybe make a
Go ahead.
suggestion, maybe, we meet, unless I'm mistaken, the 18th.
It's
If
the
we were
third Tuesday
Third Tuesday, right, would be the 18th of April? Am I not?
of July, what's the third?
No, I mean of April. Our next meeting is the 18th, right? Can we get any, I mean, we can get this on the agenda or no for that, to discuss it?
Just for open discussion, we don't have to publish that.
Okay, for open
We can,
discussion.
but-
Instead of going full 60 days right off, maybe we have a discussion at that point to see if there is information enough to wanna make a move off 1,500. I mean, they're gonna have to present some information that make us wanna change that also. And I mean, and if there isn't, we can come back on the 25th. Now, I know you have some language that's in the ordinance that's not actually in the ordinance, that if we had cleaned up, you know, I mean, some of the stuff that's...
So, if that's what we wanna do, it would be a motion to amend the language, so that way I can clean it up, and everybody's got a clean copy. And if you guys wanna send it back to the Board of Adjustment, or the Planning and Zoning Board, that's fine as well. Just basically with instructions to look at the setback number a little bit closer.
And that would be my intent if we're doing that, sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
With that is, you know, I think the language, and we can continue to tweak that, is where we want it to be. The only question is the setbacks, what's the right number for that under the circumstances? And I did planning and zoning for 20 years, and I always went by, as far as, you know, decisions that you're making, it's okay to be wrong based on the information you have available. It's not okay to be arbitrary. And that was my point in what we were setting for setbacks. And I think with the information that's available at this point, the Planning and Zoning Board made a recommendation based on information. They were not arbitrary in picking 1,500 feet as a setback. And I'm comfortable that happened with the information that's available. If there's other information that's available that might change that perspective, it needs to be presented. And I think Mr. Farsted's right, you know, some of that responsibility, not laying blame, you know, it's pretty tough to scour, but this is a subject that's been before this board, this county, and several others in this situation. So any proceedings that we have that say carbon sequestration pipeline, they are published, they're made aware of, it's not a big secret. There's been opportunities to participate in those conversations. If we're willing to pause, given, you know, the dates, deadlines, and complications and so forth, I want to get this right as we can be with the information that we know. Frankly, with what we know right now, 1,500 feet. If there's more to know, then we should know that before we make a final decision. And that final decision is not concrete forever. That's something that can be adjusted based on new, good, better, more information as we go along as well.
I got one more thing, and that's why I'd like to go with just the 18th meeting, because, I mean, and no offense to anybody in the room, but, I mean, we've spent a lot of time on this. You guys have had ample opportunities. I mean, when it comes to the second reading of an ordinance and possible adoption, that's actually the last step. I mean, the first step was our meetings leading up to this, which were more than one that we discussed this. That's why kicking this again and starting over, basically at Ross, is another undertaking, and I know, not to squash our job is to get it right, but, I mean, there needs to be involvement on this before the last moment possible. And I know, you know, maybe the point is to get it pushed or not, whatever, but I mean, you guys should have been involved along the way. So, I mean, that's why I would say one meeting to see if there's information to make us want to change our mind on where we were at. On the Planning and Zoning Board, I'm not talking about the commission as far as that, before the ordinance comes. That's why, I mean, 60 days is a long time. I think,
I guess I was here, I mean, not to, throw salt at a wound, but, I mean, for many Tuesdays, I sat up there, and...
This is a Tuesday night meeting, though.
No,
This is
well,
our third
no,
Tuesday,
but I-
or to get
but I
that,
sit
yep.
here, right, I get it, and I know some of you are on the board, or, have ways to get it there, but I mean, I sat here, every Tuesday and, said who I was, and if you, got any questions or concerns, let me know, and, I mean, there was a few questions that were asked, but, I mean, mostly it was, but you're right, it's not.
Okay, so when we have anything that comes before the planning and zoning board, there's, everybody's knowing that's gonna be affected by it, right? And people knew that this was coming up. I mean, we don't call and get them to come in. I mean, that is the public's to be active in the process. I mean, we can't force you to be at a meeting or wait till at this. I mean, our meetings are set to decide this, so I mean, you guys gotta wanna be an active participant in it. And I mean, that's kind of been bothersome. It's been, I mean...
I was just referring to the Tuesday commission meeting.
Yeah, but I mean, where this really starts though, is at the planning and zoning meetings. I mean, because when it gets up here, I mean, it's, granted, there's discussion, but a lot of times we do go along with what the board's recommendations were.
And the only time that I actually seen it, and I'm sure it wasn't, obviously not the first time, was, right before the first ordinance was read, is when I actually noticed it myself, so.
You're right, we should have been. We should have been.
Commissioner Feldheim.
Well, is it necessary to send it back to planning and zoning? They brought their recommendation to us. We have to approve it. Can't we just table it and let them provide us with the facts? I'm not saying we gotta take it back to planning and zoning. If not, we're asking them to start over with their decision that they took how many months to come up with, the research, the time. Why would we send it back to planning and zoning? And if the facts are there, we as the board are the ones that determine it, not planning and zoning. They bring their recommendation to us. I think we just table it and let somebody come up with some facts.
Is that a motion?
Well, I guess I'm going that direction. I mean, my fellow commissioners gotta either think it's probably proper to do that, or somebody's got a disagreement. Maybe we need to hear their side, but that's my thinking, is we just table it until we get more facts.
Go ahead, Ross.
I think the commission could change the setback number without it going back to planning and zoning. The idea, if you want to send it back there and have them make another recommendation, there's nothing wrong with that. It seems a little redundant at this point. The only time these things need to go back to planning and zoning is when the changes are substantial. And we're talking about changing their recommendation on a number and a few cleanup items in the language of the ordinance. So unless we're gonna rewrite the whole thing, going back to planning and zoning probably isn't the most appropriate, but it can be done.
All right, so we've already got some proposed language change that's been brought up here today.
I would like a motion on that, so no matter what we do, then I can have a clean copy prepared incorporating that language for whoever, whether it's planning and zoning board or this board meets on the subject.
Thanks, Ross. Okay, is that you, Craig?
Yes, it is. So I do have a question, and if you defer it or table it for a week and they come with some substantial, or bring some information, and the commission chooses to take the recommendation of the planning and zoning, is someone willing to accept that, or are we just going to take you to court anyway? I mean, we can put through a lot of effort here, but if the end result is they don't get what they want and they just go to court, I think we're all wasting our time. And I think that's an answer that needs to be, a question that needs to be answered.
The reality here is that we're trying to propose an ordinance that's reasonable and defensible, if they should choose to go that route. Reasonable being the key word here, is that's where the 1,500 feet came from, is 2 miles reasonable in a planning and zoning context? Probably not. From a safety context, who knows? Maybe it is. But as far as planning and zoning, they looked at a map, figured out who was potentially going to be affected, and that map, I think, was a guess. and came up with 1,500 feet as reasonable protection of orderly development in Brown County. So it's not up to us whether we get sued or not. It is up to us whether or not we can defend it. And we feel that the research we put into this gives us a decent position.
Yep, and I fully understand that, Ross, and, you know, but I think, you've come with a recommendation, and I guess I have to agree with Commissioner Gage. This process has been in place, and now we're at the second reading of the ordinance, and all of a sudden, and I'm fine with that, you bring your concerns, but you better bring some, facts to address those concerns, and I don't think that's there.
Okay, at this point, I would entertain a motion to change the language that was proposed by Ross, eliminating a few items on the draft. We would be eliminating the words material list, engineering design documents, and construction plans, and also inserting, you had one more thing up there, Ross.
Okay, so you're not gonna do that one, 'cause that's what we're talking about.
Right.
I want you to amend 60.
So the language will read, "The Board of Adjustment may reduce minimum setback of a pipeline facility project after review of setback waivers and submission of project plans to the Board of Adjustment for conditional use." A conditional use permit.
30 days, make the motion.
If everyone's okay with that, that's, entertain a motion to the effect of what I just read as a place to begin here today.
I'll move to change the language, make amendments on the language.
Okay, motion by Feldheim,
Second.
second by Dennert. Any further discussion? Everybody understands we're just amending that language that was just read. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
So we'll get a clean copy drafted, and then I've got so many different versions that I'll have to start shredding, so I don't get confused.
Okay? Now, is the wish of the commission to postpone a decision on this until after, and I guess my thought is the planning and zoning meeting on April 18th would give, and I understand it's probably redundant to take it back to the planning and zoning board, but another option would be to postpone a decision until after we've had the opportunity to hear a little more input and justification for a lesser setback, if that's the wishes of both Summit and the ethanol people. Is that reasonable?
I'd like to hear the planning and zoning board, have the planning and zoning board, if there's additional information that's gonna be brought forward that agreeably should have been brought forward before.
That they hear it also?
No fault.
Okay.
That they did the research, they made the decision that the 1,500 feet was reasonable in their estimation, and not to put more burden on them, but I would like to have them have that information presented to them for consideration, for making a recommendation to us, and if they can be swayed with better information, like I said, from my perspective, for 20 years on planning and zoning, you know, it's okay to be wrong if you if you state the findings of fact of what you're considering, what you know at the time when you're making the decision. If there's other information, that means that can change, but not to be arbitrary. And I don't, you know, and that was my point in having them do the research, is not to find an arbitrary number, find a number that they had the best information available that they were comfortable with. And if there's better information from other interested parties who have not to this point participated, we'll leave blame out of that. I would be interested in having them have one more opportunity to do that and see if it adjusts that perspective.
Scott, we can get that on the April 18th agenda for discussion, to give the interested parties ample opportunity to arrange to be at that meeting and provide whatever information they have.
I'll look at the date, I'll make sure that I can get it on there for discussion.
Okay.
You guys could notice that as a joint meeting if you all want to be present.
That Tuesday night,
That's something to think about. We don't have to make that decision right now.
right?
I think that's a good consideration.
I didn't hear what he said.
Schedule it as a joint meeting between the commission and the planning and zoning board, so that everybody has the same information and hears it. Excuse me?
You'd be traveling to spring workshop.
Spring workshop's the next day. May have to just leave after the meeting. Which is the commission?
Next morning.
You and I would have to leave after the meeting that night.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Drive in the dark.
I can- yeah,
You could
that'll be fine.
reschedule the planning and zoning meeting for another day.
Yeah, but they've already noticed, I think, we've
Okay.
already seen. All right, so I'll make a motion to table this, send it back to the planning and zoning on the 18th agenda with more information and input, and, see if we need to change our minds on that meeting.
So postpone this decision for
This,
Thursday, for a month?
till after, yeah, we can post, yeah, till after, we'll go a month, or go the 25th or something at least, if once we have more recommendations.
If they meet on the 18th,
We meet the
give what-
18th, we'd be back on the 25th, so
Right.
table it till the 25th.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second, motion by Gage, second by Weiss. Everybody understand what we're doing? Everybody out there online and on the phone? We're tabling decision on ordinance 243 until April 25th, sending this back to the planning and zoning board with the intent of having them listen to any additional or new testimony that may be made available, and we will decide and make a decision, second reading on the
Can I
25th.
ask one question?
Yes.
Prior to that meeting, so today's the 6th, sometime in the next week, would it be possible for you guys to give, and I know you don't have an exact, but what you have right now for a route for the pipeline in Brown County? I mean, could we get that ahead of time so we can look at distances before we get to the meeting on our own?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's a lot of us that do a lot of this stuff prior to the meeting and look at stuff, so you're not, so would that be possible? I mean, you could send it here to the auditor, or whoever we could get it, so,
Yeah.
would that be possible? Sometime next week, that gives us, at least 4 or 5 days.
And any other pertinent information.
Yeah, anything else, but one of the big things would be the closest route you guys have right now to either into Aberdeen or any other part of Brown County.
Absolutely.
Someone out there on the phone have some input? Okay.
Can I ask for an acknowledgement if she's still on the phone from the young lady from Navigator too, if she's willing to participate? And I'm comfortable saying young lady from my perspective.
I don't believe, I think she dropped off.
All right.
Commissioner, our Chairman, this is Jason Gloat, South Dakota point of contact for the Navigator project. Elizabeth had to jump off the line so she could participate in another meeting, but we will be there and would appreciate the opportunity to provide information to the Planning and Zoning Board. So, yes, we will be there.
Thank you for that
Thanks,
acknowledgement.
Jason. Okay, the planning and zoning meets, on April 18th at 7 PM in the community room, which is the basement of the courthouse. Come in the west door here, go downstairs, either by stairs or the elevator. So 7 o'clock PM, any and all interested parties that have any information to provide, we hope to see you there, because on the 25th of April, this commission will make a decision on this ordinance. Ethanol people okay with that? Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Anyone out there on the line that would like to offer anything else? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. I want to thank everybody for coming in today, for your testimony, for keeping it civil, and we appreciate your time that you're taking on this important issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Safe travels.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Arnie.
Thank you for being here. Arnie, thanks for being here today. Appreciate your perspective.
Thanks for all you do. how it's supposed to work, you don't have to always go down. I wanna see
Respectful,
All right, next item on the agenda was number 6. If you weren't on at the beginning of the meeting, the director of equalization is not available today, so we're moving on to number 7. Actually, what I would like to do is, I would like to move the Highway 21 discussion ahead of that. That may be a lot shorter a conversation than number 7, if that's okay with everybody. Brett, did you?
Is Dirk showing up?
Dirk should be known, but Dirk is online, so he can jump in. Is that okay with everybody that we discuss that first? Go ahead. How are you?
Good, I'm Brett Fleece. I live on County Road 21 between County Road 16 and 18.
Let me just verify. Dirk, you are online and can hear? Probably on mute.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks, Dirk.
No, I hear you.
Just wanted to verify that he was there.
Okay, I've lived on that road since 1994, and at that time it was all asphalt from 21 over to 18 going north to Highway 12. Back before Dirk took the job the second time, Jan Wiseman was running the county, and we had all those wet years, and the roads started getting soft, and to fix them up, Jan started dumping gravel on all those roads. And that was, I thought, temporary fix. And every year I've been talking to Dirk, asking when the possibility of getting that goes back to asphalt where it's going to happen. And Dirk's told me, you know, next year, and then last year was supposed to be this year, but it never seems to happen. So I was just wondering what the long-term plan on those roads are. Basically 18 and 21 coming out of the river bottom. It's been asphalt from 16 past Lockens, and then it quits, and then down the river bottom is gravel. They put a new bridge down in there, and that was done 3-4 years ago. So the bridge has been done, and I know there's been some other problems with water going over that road when water gets high, but they've dumped gravel down there, and that's been raised somewhat. So this was on my floor drain this morning. If anybody wants to take that home with them, that's collected off my trucks into the shop. This was a picture of Highway County Road 21 on March 23rd, if everybody wants to look at that. Send it around the table. That's looking east on 21 up off the river bottom. The Green Leg is my farm with about 500,000 bushels of storage on it, and I need those roads to get to, usually to Poet, so I go towards Groton, or I come the other way to Bath and come from the south.
All right, Mr. Rogers, would you like to discuss this? I know it's on your 5-year plan. You want to elaborate?
Yeah, you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
First off, everything Brett's saying is true. I didn't see what the pictures he showed are, but I got a pretty good idea. And as I told you the other day, Dwayne, you know, this actually came up, Brett, if you remember, we were in Warner, like my second week when I came back, so, I don't think he's embellishing anything or, you know, making it sound any worse than it really is. I think he's pretty accurate. Unfortunately, I've been telling him, I've been limping along a few years here trying to figure out 21. We'll talk about 21 first, and then I'll go to 18. In 21, it's with a batch of roads, and I'm going west out of, on the west side of 37 up there at Claremont. That's another one. We have the same issue where we got the bridge kind of straightened out, and we haven't got back to get the asphalt. And then 20 north of Claremont's another one. Those are all in next year. And Brad, you can believe me or don't, I would totally understand if you didn't. But there's a bunch of those, you know, 3A and 6 up at Elm Lake, It's just things that we haven't got all the way through them. They got parts of them, even like he says, we got like Brett said, we got the first mile west of the west end of that one year. Oh God, that was probably 7-8 years ago now. We didn't get that paved on a year that, I guess we had a mile worth of asphalt sitting. The plan is we're gonna, like I said, believe me or don't, but it's in there for next year. It's very limited there. The road west of Claremont and 20 north of Claremont. I also have 27 in there for next year. It's another one we've milled up some of it, put a blotter in there. But 27, I'm guessing with the way prices are going, will fall out. That'll probably slide into the next year. So, I guess that's my story about 21. I intend to pave it. Hopefully the bottom, we'll see. I mean, it's probably gonna flood based on the latest projections. So, we'll see what happens, but, that's the plan for that. 18 is the harder fix. At one time, I was gonna blotter it, and we still might try that. And then that's 4 miles on either side of 12, so that's an 8-mile project. I don't have a specific answer for when we would try 18. Just try to work it in the next couple of years again, Brett. That's the best I can tell you on that one. 21 will happen next year, though.
In 2024?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
How many miles is that dirt?
It's 4. The whole thing's 5 miles long. The 1 mile on the west end will need a little bit. I'll probably throw a chip seal or some kind of seal on it, but the asphalt's still good. So there's only 4 miles that'll need asphalt. Today's prices this year, that'd be about $550,000 worth of asphalt and a couple hundred to lay it. But the costs are the cost. If it wasn't going in one road, it would go in another road, so.
Is it the mile of the 5 miles, is it the mile that's on the farthest west nearest 16 that's done?
Yeah, first mile and a half.
Mile and a half.
Yeah, he goes the first
Is it a
intersection,
mile
then
and a half?
yeah, that's our half mile to Lockens Road.
Is the river bottom, is that about 2 miles east of the 16 intersection?
Yes.
That sounds about right.
2 or a little more.
It's right at,
It's just short of the section lines in the river, I think.
That map we keep looking at right there is that 5-year plan that I had mentioned.
The one on the left?
The far left, yeah.
But I know that.
That's the bridge.
No, it's both. It has road projects and bridge projects.
Oh, there you go, yeah.
It's the second one from the left.
Okay.
So could I ask Dirk, I thought that road was gonna get done last year, and then I thought it was supposed to be this year. What happens to get that road pushed out of getting done and something else gets put ahead of it? Or is it a money issue, or is it a time issue, or is it, how do you prioritize which jobs get done?
So, like this year, Road 16, and, which runs from, basically from, Tacoma Park, Road 13, up to State 10. That's one road that's getting done, and the other road getting done is Road 5, west of Frederick. And in those two instances, 16 got ahead of this one, just basically because it's got more traffic and it's a longer stretch, and it's more of an arterial road. Same thing with 5 west of Frederick. 5 goes all the way across the county, and on the west end of it hooks up with a road in McPherson County and continues on west. So in those specific instances, that's what this year is. In the past years, the last probably 5 or 6 years, we've been trying to make sure that the roads that don't get spring load limits on them were all improved to the point that they'd be able to sit for a few years before we had to get back again. So that's why we made the investment on Road 23 down there from Spratt going east, south of you there. And also up on 11 between getting the bridge replaced and getting that road put back together. That opened up so there's no load limits on 11 going into Columbia now. So So those are a couple examples, Brett. I can go through all of it. It's basically, you know, when we decide on that stuff, or I come to conclusions, it's what kind of shape it was in at the start, which yours was so bad that we milled it up a few years ago rather than leave it like it was. And then after that, it's kind of how it is related to the rest of the system. In this case, it runs from one road to the other, and I'm not discounting it at all because I'm not an idiot about how much corn goes over it. Which is another interesting thought based on the earlier pipeline discussion. I mean, I'm not discounting that it's not important because I totally agree with you, the volume of product that goes over that. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, I'm willing to put it back to asphalt as far as money goes.
Sure, and I appreciate your communication, and we've had some good talks throughout the years. I appreciate all the work you did for the county. What year did we do that meeting down in Warner? And you came back on for...
Well, 9 years ago, because I just went past my 9th year of being back, so...
Okay, I thought it was probably longer than that, but I guess I've had the patience for 9 years and talked to you every year about it, and just wanted to bring it up again to the commission and try to get some kind of a date and know it's gonna get done some year.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, we've had, like you said, many conversations, and you've been more than reasonable, and I'm not here trying to pacify you either. I mean, you have legitimate concerns, and unfortunately, in a group of about 40, 50 miles of road that all kind of have that same story to them. 18, I still, like I said, I might try stabilizing it again and putting a blotter on there just because it's about a third of the cost. But I can't say that, you know, I'm 100% certain that'll hold up for infinity either.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of traffic on that Highway 18 during harvest, and with my trucks, there's my bin site. Lockins have 2 bin sites on the west side of 21. They probably go to Bath because they don't want to go to gravel, drive on the gravel. You know, 21 gets asphalted, 18 gets asphalted over to Highway 12. Some of that traffic would go that way instead of going on County Road 16 to Bath, which would help that road last longer too. So you might be diverting traffic one way or the other, but the roads get evened out a little bit more.
Oh, and I fully agree with you there too, because 16 is another one that I just kind of cross my fingers every year, because about another year or so, and like you said, that one's going to be past the point of an easy fix as well. So, those are good points, and we can certainly look at it. And we all know the cost of things. I don't even like bringing it up. We'll just do what we can as best we can, and go from there. That's my story, and hopefully I'm being conservative enough next year that we can get most of it. But like I said, if something falls out, it'll be Road 27. It won't be.
So, Dirk, do you do those roads yourself, or do you hire that out to, like, Jensen's or somebody else?
You mean the work?
Yeah, the work and the asphalt work.
It just depends. Right now, it's about half and half. In general, what used to happen is that it was too expensive to farm all of it out, or, to let it all out. There's too much for the county to do all of it. So every year, basically, I got to kind of work through that and try to package things in a certain way to do it. And it's getting now it's not as hard of a decision anymore, because we can't buy enough stuff to have too much to do at our level. So I got to shift gears a little bit. So it's a little, there's not a lot to it. If it's a higher traffic road, sometimes I like the last time Prairiewood was paved, we had a contractor do it, just so they can set up the traffic control and do the flagging and things like that. they're a little better at it than we are, but out in the rural areas, or most likely, for example, the stretch of County 21, that's something that we would probably do, easy to get to, and things like that. Did I answer the question or just ramble?
No, you answered it, I guess, but it basically come down to if you wanted to hire it out this year, you couldn't say that, well, you don't have time to do it. You could get it done, then you'd have to say, well, it's because of the money. So, or the commission would say, well, it's because of the money, we don't have that budget for this year. I guess those are the two reasons why it shouldn't get done this year.
Yeah, so asked in that specific context, the answer, I guess, would be I didn't ask for enough money to have it be for this year.
It's not that you didn't ask, it's just that it's not there.
Well, my budget got fulfilled, what I requested. So, but that isn't an unlimited number either. I've never once asked it for what we needed. It's always what the county can afford to spend on the highway department from my perspective. So, but as long as we went this way, if the commission has $750,000 they want to give to this deal, we can do it this year. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you guys in that predicament, but I'm trying to answer the question.
No, I appreciate the segue, Dirk, if you give me a moment. Given the number of miles of road that Brown County has that the county's responsible for, and just on an average, the county has struggled to allocate $10 million for the last several years to the county highway budget for everything, including snow removal as well as construction and rehabilitation. With it considered the number of miles of road that we have, frankly, $20 million a year isn't enough to keep up. So trying to do it with 10, and this is a problem that's been around for well over the last 3 generations, is providing enough resources for the county to accommodate what it needs to do to properly maintain the highway system that we're expected to maintain. And it doesn't help the problem, but to have a recognition that, trying to keep property taxes low, that falls on the county commission, because all of those payments, including mine this morning, my biannual contribution, get paid to the treasurer's office, even though the county only gets to keep a small portion of that money that we collect and verify is available, and then we redistribute it to other resources. So the amount of money that we get to keep, and when there's pressure placed on to keep property taxes low, it's the county budget that suffers, and this is the net result. My soapbox for the morning, one of them anyway.
Anything else, Brett?
No, just the same rambling, but I brought it up, I think one of these last meetings I came to must have been over 10 years ago, corn was $7, and I was trying to get my neighbors to say, we need to pay more taxes for these roads to keep them up. We want to be progressive. We listen to the pipeline economy of Brown County, want to be progressive. We need roads. Equipment's getting bigger, more trucks. There'll be 1,800 truckloads off this one farm. That's just me for that road.
Mm-hmm.
And I pay close to $100,000 taxes every year, and I get to drive on this road. And I know there's other people that complain about their roads too, but I think I've had a lot of patience. And Dirk will say next year, and I want to believe Dirk, but maybe some other road will come up and it won't get done next year. I guess things happen. I know how that works. And this won't do me a lot of good. It'll get me to my stop sign going to the east, and then I'll still have 4 miles of gravel, Highway 12. So it's not everybody has a dream of asphalt roads, but it was that way in 1994 when I moved there, and I've put millions of dollars into that farm site. And I wanted a way in and out. And then if it does go back to asphalt, there will be 3 months out of the year, there will be load limits on, which we have to keep that road good. And but then there's 3 months I can't haul out of that site. So looking back, I probably should have, if I would have known these roads were going to go back to this, I probably should have built on a state highway, which I am looking at now, doing another facility, because I can't count on a county road to be in this condition.
Yeah, we struggle to maintain a farm-to-market road into each community.
I understand.
Much less into, production facilities and collection sites. You've been incredibly patient, we appreciate that. And
and I use all the other roads in the county too, so I'm glad that road from Stratford to Fernie's got redone, and the roads up by Claremont, I farm up there, I'm happy to see those roads get done too, and I know it all comes down to money and time, but we gotta look, at least we're looking at a 5-year plan, but we should look at a longer plan than that even too. And I do wanna make a comment on the roads when you do them new, like that road at Stratford to Fernie, that road seems to get narrow and there's such a drop-off on the sides of those roads. It almost is like you need to put gravel along the shoulder with this farm equipment, because you get a truck on that side or a large piece of equipment, you're ruining that road right away, and no farmer wants to do that. So it's just a comment on trying to keep them as wide as you can. That's all I...
Yeah, a comment on that too, Brad, I totally agree with you. You know, I cringe every time a triple's going down with the outside wheel hanging off the edge, you know, 'cause you know, and you've all seen it, that's where the road breaks up first. We used to try to do that, and grading projects are awesome. That's what all that stuff needs. You know, the 3 miles that we actually regraded, from, you know, the Strat corner 3 miles up to the bridge over the Mog there, that was a pretty minor grading. Now, it did go through the river bottom, so that added some costs and challenges. But that was like $750,000 a mile. And I'm totally on board with doing that. And there are a few other alternatives, you know, you can do to rectify some of them narrow grades, with gravel, and we've done that, and cutting benches in there and stacking stuff. But that's another problem you have every time, and that's part of the reason why I get hesitant when I look at 16 south of Bath for that exact reason. If you went in there and just threw a 2-inch overlay on that, now we're gonna have a cliff on the edge, you know? So that is another thing that we gotta battle, whether trying to find that balance point in there too. You know, if you gotta start regrading everything, can you about imagine what that's gonna do to cost? And I hate bitching about money or the lack thereof, but that is kind of the reality there. But that is noted, Brad, when we do that to rate, if we do anything and add anything to the surface of the road, you always take that into consideration.
Anything else, Dirk?
God, I hope not.
Brett, any further comments you'd like to make? We appreciate you taking time out of your day to come in.
No other
Talk to us
comments,
over.
I was just hoping it could get done this year, you know, if the board sees it fit, that they could just have some more money to get it done this year, so we don't have to hope for next year. That's all I would ask of the board.
Appreciate it. We will take a close look at that and...
Can you return that to the county road, or you want us to take care of that?
It was tough getting in that bag this morning.
I hear ya. You did a nice job.
But I appreciate your help, Dirk, and I appreciate the commission for listening, and I respect you guys for all the tough decisions you have to make in the county.
All right, thanks for coming in, Brett.
Thanks for bringing it to our attention.
All right, next up, we will talk about, as it's listed on the agenda, new jail Hub City building update. Okay, as everyone knows, we, April 1st of last year, motion was made to buy the Hub City building with the understanding that if we didn't have 40% of the projected cost in the bank or committed to by April 1st of this year, that we would sell that building. We've been, in the last month, we've been in numerous conversations on what options we have, whether it be with that building or other options. Sheriff Lunsman is here. Dave, would you like to offer anything as far as from your perspective where we're at? Or should we just continue visiting?
I think we can just continue for now.
Okay. I've been involved in several meetings with the sheriff and the state's attorney regarding our options and what the future looks like as far as disposing of that building if we were to list it for sale. We do have 3 or 4 possible options for listing it or putting it out for sealed bids, listing it with a realtor. So we do have some options there that we'll need to decide what is the best course for Brown County. Our goal is to obviously get as much out of it as possible if we decide to sell it. That decision has not been reached yet because we're still waiting for some information from the Director of Equalization as far as potential value. You know, what would we list it at if we were going to list it? Again, the best way of disposing of it, the very first course of action that we as a commission would have to take would be declare that property as surplus, if our desire is to try and sell it. So that will be the first course of action that we'll need to take before we can move forward. We've been exploring a downscaled version of what we were originally talking as far as the number of beds, not only in that facility, but also we've got some numbers from our consultants about the potential of a new build in a location yet to be determined. So we do have some options that we're considering. In all honesty, we were waiting until the legislature sine died on the 41st day, or whatever it is they call it anymore, the last day of session, to see what, if any, help we would get through the legislative process. As it turned out, we got no help. The county's got no help with any type of financial commitment towards a new jail facility or a remodeled jail facility. So having learned that, now we're faced with the decision of what to do. The need for additional jail space has not decreased. If anything, it's increased. What we're looking at for the future is a continued increase in the number of bed nights that we're gonna need to provide. Those numbers are not going down. The need for either a remodeled or a new jail is continuing to grow. We know we have to do something. It's getting it done at a reasonable cost, something that we can obviously afford to build, but we know the need is there, and the options, if we don't do something, could end up costing Brown County a considerable amount of money on an annual basis with regards to transporting inmates wherever we can find room for them. That's probably the biggest challenge we're facing, the limited space that we have and the need going forward to accommodate the inmates that continue to come our way. So having said that, if it is the desire of the commission, which we need to decide, to dispose of that building as we agreed to last year when the motion was made to purchase the building, first step is to declare that building surplus so that we can figure out the best way to move forward. And again, the state's attorney has provided us with options of what we need to do in the order they need to be done in. First being declare property a surplus, and then decide, do we want to be sealed bids, do we want to list it with a realtor, what's in the best interest of the county. Ross, do you have anything you'd like to add to what we're talking about here at all?
No, but that pretty much sums it up. Declare it surplus, get an appraisal so it's on file, and I believe we figured out that Gene's office can do that. So the timeline is just I don't know how quick the turnaround is on that. If you were to go private and hire somebody, it would be a while, and I know those guys are busy right now. And then it's just a matter of how do we want to sell it. I didn't talk much about public auction because just the informal discussions I've had with several of you, it doesn't seem like that would be the route. The recommendation would probably be open it up for bids first, see what you get, and then reevaluate after that.
Okay. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, I fully understand that we need additional space. I also understand it doesn't make any sense to buy a building 3 times bigger or 4 times bigger than what we need. And yeah, the thought was that we'd get some financial help from the state. Well, that didn't happen. But I do believe we are much better off trying to figure out if we want to build a 50, 60, 70 bed facility, because that's what we can afford without bankrupting this county. And I think that's possible with some of the numbers I've heard, as far as what it would cost for that. You'd have a new site, your maintenance would be less, as far as what's gonna be upkeep. So I believe the right thing to do is declare it a surplus.
Any other input from the commissioners? Having said that, is that a motion?
I would make that motion.
To declare the Hub City building property as surplus.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Feldheim, second by Gage, to declare the Hub City building that we purchased a year ago as surplus. Is there any further discussion? Any questions, comment?
Bob Schatz, I would agree with that. The building needs to be sold. It's costing us $250,000 a year right now, including lost property tax revenue. It needs to be sold.
Go ahead, Dave.
I do have one suggestion, though, is that I would hope anyway, and I don't know if this is even possible, but that whatever proceeds that are made from this building would be dedicated to a new facility, a new building, just so that we are moving forward. Otherwise, we all know what the consequences are. And to Bob's statement here, I think everybody needs to know that I gave you guys the numbers, but if we transport our overages right now, it's gonna cost us in about $2.5 million a year to transport people someplace we don't know where they're gonna go. So whoever was here before talking about roads, there'll be a lot more roads that are gonna be gravel or not maintained at all if we have to start transporting these prisoners around wherever in the United States. So make sure everybody understands that we have a lot at stake for Brown County. I would rather not burn $2.5 million someplace in the world. I would much rather put it into a building where hopefully some people can come here and help pay for it. And I think that's possible.
Would you like an amendment on that motion? Because I have no problem with that. Whatever that building sells for, I'd amend my motion that those funds be held for the future site of a build project.
You okay with that? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to declare the Hub City building surplus and to dedicate any realized profit from that building, from the sale of that building, to a new jail structure. Is that accurate?
Yep, no profit, proceeds.
Proceeds, yeah. Proceeds.
Could be profit, you never know.
Proceeds.
Fucking half.
Any further discussion, input? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Go ahead. Hold on, yes.
This is Dirk. Just something popped into my head, and I have no idea if it's applicable, but there's a minimum length of time you gotta own something before you surplus it sometimes.
Ross?
I think it was a year, but I'd have to double.
I'm not trying to jam anything up, and I'll stay out, but I know there's 18 months that applies to something.
Yeah, and I didn't bring the big bid book, but we've had it 18 months.
That was about a year. It was a year ago, April 1st.
There you go. Yep.
So can we, how about if we pass the motion with the understanding that unless we're prohibited by law to keep it for 18 months, we're gonna assume that it's a year, and we'll pass that motion, or approve that motion, unless we find out that we have to keep it a longer period of time. We'll research that. Is that okay with everybody?
Is that 18 months before we declare it surplus, or 18 months before we close the transaction?
I didn't bring my bid book with me today, so.
You can research that with that caveat, but I'm okay with that.
Everybody understand what we're doing? Okay, if we can declare it surplus now, we will. If we have to wait till a date certain, moving forward, we will provide that. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. As we find out more information as far as a new build, location, potential costs, number of beds, all the things that need to be considered, we have a lot of discussion that needs to take place yet. We will make that public as we learn more. Go ahead.
How do I become part of that process in the discussion? I want to be part of this process of the discussion. How do I do that?
Just come to the commission meetings and see what we have to report. Most of what we will be dealing with will be potential contracts, so that'll probably be discussed in exec until we're able to make that information public. Because if we're dealing with the purchase of property, for example, or the potential overall costs that we'll need to put out for bids, obviously that's something we can't divulge until we have that decision made. So we will divulge information as we're able to make it public.
Okay, I have a request for other information, but I'll give that to you guys after, because that's not part of this discussion.
Okay. Go ahead, Corey.
What did you guys pay for that building?
$4.5 million.
4.5?
Wanna buy it?
No. Last time I checked, so.
Asked and answered.
No, it's just a good building, put some industry in, if we can find that industry to move into this town.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
We need some jobs in here.
Put a lot of
Huge
fencing
building.
material in there.
What's that?
You can put a lot of fencing material in there.
I'm trying to go downhill, not uphill.
I'd like to see 100 people in there building stuff.
I would too. I think it'd just be it's a beautiful building if we can just find the right.
Right fit.
What did you say?
What's that?
He's gonna be a salesman for us, I can see it.
No, maybe we can reach out. I know Bobcat was looking at it. I do know that for a fact, before you guys bought it. You know, they would fit us beautifully, I think.
There's value to that piece of property.
Oh, yeah.
There are some potential people that are interested.
If we can just find the right one or get the word out somehow.
Right.
You know.
We just did.
Well, yeah, exactly. So maybe something will come up, good will come out of it.
We're cautiously optimistic that the right person will come along with the right bid amount that'll be advantageous to everybody. At the end of the day, it'll get back on the tax rolls and be a productive building again.
But as it was acknowledged, we need a road forward to address the problems that we have with capacity.
Yep, we're not gonna give up on that pursuit because the need is not getting any less. Anything else on that discussion on the new jail? Okay, we will move on then to the consent calendar. Lynn?
Approval of the general meeting minutes of February 28th, 2023.
Move. Second.
Motion by Weiss, second by Dennert. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Plain.
Move.
Motion by Feldheim, second by Gage. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
HR report.
Move. Second.
Motion by Dennert, second by Gage. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Travel request.
Move. Second.
Motion by Gage, second by Feldheim. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Lottery permit for the Elm Lake Association.
Move.
Second.
You want to buzz it?
See if you can get there.
Motion by Weiss, second by Sutton. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Abatement.
Move.
Motion by Gage. Second. Second by Dennert. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Tempted to vote no, we're broke.
Authorize advertising for the Brown County Fair concert screen bids.
Move.
Second.
Motion by Feldheim, second by Weiss. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Authorize the chairman to sign the second quarter of the LEMPG report.
Move.
Second.
Motion by Feldheim, second by Weiss. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Claim assignment.
Move.
Second.
Motion by Gage, second by Weiss. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Purchase culverts off the Beetle County bid.
Move.
Motion by Dennert. Second by Weiss. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Plats.
Move.
Second.
Motion by Gage, second by Weiss. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Is there any other business to come before the Brown County Commission this morning?
Just to inform you guys, Judy Lloyd called this morning. The Township Association will be meeting next Tuesday. 6 o'clock will be the meal, and then the meeting will be at 6:30 downstairs in the community room.
Okay.
They haven't had mail up there for a few days. 6 o'clock for the meal and 6:30 for the meeting.
I know a lot of people haven't had mail since last Friday because of the weather.
They didn't.
That's on the 11th?
Yes. I didn't think cars would make it out in time.
Right.
I know mine's coming. I get pictures of my mail, but I don't actually get it.
Yeah.
All right, is there any need for an executive session today?
Yes, short one.
Okay, legal, or contracts, or both?
Personnel and legal.
Personnel and legal. Okay, I would entertain a motion to go into exec.
Move. Third. Fourth.
Motion by Denner, second by Gage to go into executive session. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, we're back in session. No action as a result of the exec. Is there anything else that we need to discuss this morning?
Just to let you know on what Dirk said about the surplus. I looked up codified law, and it says the governing board of a political subdivision may sell, trade, loan, destroy, or otherwise dispose of any land, structures, equipment, or other property which the governing board has by appropriate motion determined is no longer necessary, useful, or suitable for the purpose for which it was acquired. No motion is required to sell, trade, loan, destroy, or otherwise dispose of consumable supplies, printed text, zoo animal, or subscription. I talked to Ross, he's gonna just check with Dirk to see where he got the 18 months, but that's what we found.
That may be depending on the source that it comes from or the funding source. They may have certain restrictions on retention. But
Like if they get a federal grant to buy a piece of equipment or something, there would
right,
be a
if
time.
we buy something from federal
Right.
surplus, it also has a
Sure.
time limit, I believe, it's
Sure.
something like that, but
So based on that, it sounds like we're okay.
Yep.
More to come.
thank you.
You're welcome.
On that note, we did, that needs to be public, but I'll announce anyway, Rachel called me on Tuesday. The circus finished up in Jamestown over the weekend, and they wanted to get down here before the storm hit. So she was approached to see if the county had any place to accommodate some of their animals. And so, she called and asked what I thought would be best. Do we just, give it to them for nothing? I said, well, from a liability standpoint, I think it'd be best to drop a lease, just like we would with anybody else, charge them a reasonable amount for the 2.5 days they were gonna be in there. Make them provide, proof of insurance, just like would anyone else. And so they showed up Tuesday night, and I believe it was a...
There is a lease coming through next week.
Okay.
After the fact, but
It was, they housed, 1 elephant, 3 camels, and 1 tiger. And everything was going good as of yesterday afternoon, so. We did our part and housed the animals. They were more than happy to, pay a little bit to get in there, and the animals were safe.
Their workers were in campers or some type of homes or pole-type homes or something that they plugged into electricity?
That I can't answer, she didn't say that.
That's what I understood her, yeah.
And what we charge should be enough to cover any utility costs that were involved in any potential cleanup, so I just wanna let you know that she did contact me on that, and it sounded like a good thing to do, so. Circus, I think, is starting this afternoon, so they'll probably have it there by now. Anything else? Long day, appreciate everybody sticking around, being patient. I think everything went good today, everybody remained fairly civil, a lot of good information, so. Entertain a motion.
Motion adjourned.
Motion by Feldheim. Second by Dennert. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.